Well, it's 4 o'clock. We can start so you crank it up. You crank it up, Joel, and we'll call a meeting.
All right, sounds good. I'll start off with the roll call. Director, Committee Member Paul,
Here.
Committee Member Anderson,
Here.
Chair Riley.
Here.
All committee members are present.
Thank you. I don't know how many people are on, and I don't know how many people may represent the public, but let's first go out for any public comment in general on subjects that are not on our agenda.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand. Chair Riley, I see no raised hand.
Okay, and we'll bring it back to the committee, but can someone tell me how many people might be on?
There are
That's
two
beyond the
members of the
screen
public
that I
are
see?
attending.
Okay, so, all right, it's not a big number. Two's a workable number. All right, let's go to the agenda. We have discussion items, no written report, so this will all be live and in the moment. So let's go, Dave, I'll go to you for item number 1, progress.
Yeah, and I
review.
think we'll turn it over to Stephanie and Phil. They've got some interesting things to share.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. So before we get started here, I just have to say that Phil and I have been very busy, and a lot of progress has been made on improving our status as far as many things that I'm going to kind of let Phil walk through. But needless to say, we have been working closely together, and contract has been signed and completed. So we are actually fully functional at this time after the special board meeting.
That was fast. Wonderful.
Yeah. So Phil, why don't you go ahead and give them an oral report on the what we've done with our various different services at this time.
Okay.
Can I just stop, just slow you down for a minute and say, how long
Sure.
might this be? Just so I get a
Not very
sense.
long. 5-10 minutes.
Very
max.
long means not 2 hours or?
No, the entire meeting, it should be not terribly long today.
Oh,
You know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'll jump in then. And, I just want to thank everyone for the help. It really, things have gone very smoothly over the last 2 or 3 weeks, just getting all our systems in places and getting, advertising out, getting the newsletter out. It's all gone very, very smoothly. So I'm just really delighted to report that, at least from my perspective. Stephanie?
Oh, you're muted.
No, I agree. Yeah, it is, including the very first thing that I asked, which was help from Phil to get a handout that we needed for our Water Smart Innovations Conference in Nevada and Las Vegas, where one of my staff was doing a presentation at this big international conference. And Phil was able to quickly turn around and get printed some documents that I was struggling with. So good start.
Great. Good. Yeah. So let me just start at the top here, and we'll talk about the mailing list. The strategy there with the mailing list was to design a newsletter, a new template for the newsletter, and get out a weekly newsletter to our mailing list. And to accomplish a couple things. And one was it was intended as sort of a progress report on the water supply and the buyout. Obviously we're principally focused on the water supply now because of the upcoming hearing over in Salinas. And it's intended to inform, educate, and counter misunderstandings, just to get that, I know you guys talked a lot about the importance of sort of getting the story out there, and I've just realized how important that is, the kinds of questions that have come up in the community. And now I'm just much more sort of attuned as to what it is the needs of the water district are, and aware of what people are asking for. And so the first newsletter that we got out last Thursday was on Pure Water Monterey. And the big question that was coming up in what I was hearing out in the community was that people very simply didn't know what, certainly we're all familiar with Pure Water Monterey, but there's a lot of folks out there that don't know anything about it, don't know it, how long it's been up and running, who was responsible for putting it together in the first place, who's involved in it, what the accomplishments have been, where it's at now, what the future looks like. So the newsletter was intended to answer those questions. And in the next 3 weeks, we'll be sort of continuing to sort of deal with issues like that. For instance, this coming week, I'm going to be sort of working on something around, pocketbook issues and how, the potential approval of CalAM would impact the ratepayers in this community insofar as pocketbook issues are concerned. So that's it. So just really happy with the way that went. And social media, all the platforms have been updated that we're currently using to get the message out through social media. And this is one area that I was a little slow to get to because there were so many other things, more important things from my perspective, that needed to be taken care of and needed to get a really good understanding of what our narrative was going to be over the next month, so that and so once we got that established, then we could start getting out social media that supported that. So that's principally the strategy there, so that the social media will reflect what it is that we're saying elsewhere.
Well, can I add one thing to that real quick?
Yeah, surely.
So the other thing that we discovered as we went through this process, our Facebook page that we had was started at some point in the past where we really don't know who started it. And that made it pretty much impossible for us to be able to share the development of the Facebook page. So we had to move our Facebook page to a new site. Facebook has changed their once they changed the name to Meta, they changed a lot of things about how business pages work. And so what we used to have in the past was much, in my opinion, simpler to work with, and they've increased a lot of security and things like that. So as part of that, we did move our site, and the old page has a reference to our new Facebook page. So if you've liked the old one, please find out where our new one is and go to the new one and join us on that new page.
Yeah, and we will be making a concerted effort to sort of reach out to those people that were friends before and inviting them to the new page. That's one of our strategies as well. So that's progressing. So there were a few hiccups at first that we needed to resolve, and right now where we're at is that we've got and you haven't seen them yet, Stephanie, but we've got 15 posts in place that we're cleaning up right now and sort of getting to a point where where they would successfully communicate what it is that we want to communicate. And I'll show those to you within the next couple of days. And then once we get that set resolved, then we can start plugging in posts every day. And that's our goal. Our goal within the next week or so is to start posting every day. And once we're, the person that's working with me to oversee the social media, once she is sort of familiar, totally linked into the process and has our platform in place, then it should go very smoothly. So we're picking up steam here. And then it'll be her responsibility to stay on top of posting every day and boosting once a week. And for those of you that aren't aware of boosting, that's basically advertising on the Facebook platform, and it allows you the possibility to reach out to considerably larger audiences than you have as a part of your position in Facebook. So, and again, the strategy there is to inform, to educate, to counter misunderstandings, and, you know, to cultivate dialogue between the water district and the folks in the community. And then the website is coming up. I've got some ideas that I'm working on this end, and it might take a little bit. I was hoping to be able to, well, initially, the ideas that I was thinking of were less ambitious than the ideas that I have now. And I think the reworking the front page of the website and making it a little bit more accessible and making the information a little bit more understandable to the public is my goal. And just basically making it simpler to use, and, you know, in alignment with, you know, some of the other things we're doing as well. So I expect, hopefully within the next 3 or 4 weeks, that we'll have made those changes, but it's not really sort of critical to what we're doing in other areas right now. It doesn't really interfere in any way. So that is high on my priority list. And then of course, the print ads that we've been putting out, we've got more ads coming up this week and next week, you know, that will be dealing with the pocketbook issues, leading right into the Coastal Commission, you know, on the 17th. And other than that, you know, I'm sort of prepared to provide any kind of presentation, review, editing, or graphics as necessary for presentations that may be coming up either to the public or at the Coastal Commission. That's it. So
Yeah, let's circle back to
sure.
item 1A, which is the mailing list. I don't think it was made clear enough that we now have a substantive, huge, enormous set of email addresses in our database.
Right.
And I guess some of the print ads are similar to what's gone out as newsletter or short blurbs on the MailChimp, on the email distribution. You've all seen them. There's a little edge to them. There's a little bit of grabbing the viewer or the consumer right by the front of the shirt and saying, "Hey, look at me." It's outside my comfort zone, and I'm fine with it. It's been very effective. Stephanie could share with you. So the responses to the email blast come to one of our generic websites that then Stephanie has a pointer so she gets to look at them.
And what did the email blast say?
Well, first off, we're going to have to add all the directors to the email list. Then
Well, they are on the email list.
yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, you should
Um,
have received it last Friday, right, Phil?
Pardon me?
It was last Friday, right?
No, last Thursday. You didn't get it, Karen?
Well,
didn't get it.
It's possible I missed it because I.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it
It
would have been
went to junk.
Thursday. You should be in there, but it was very similar to the print ad. You know, Pure Water Monterey expansion, working on the approval. I don't know if Phil or Stephanie want to pull up the email blast, but
I can't.
If it was basically similar to the print. ad,
Yeah.
That's enough. That's
Yeah.
all.
but the important thing is we actually got some feedback. You know, anywhere from somebody saying, "Oh, you know, you can't rely on poo water," or somebody saying, "Hey, you're not concentrating enough on the health of the Seaside Basin and protective water levels," to somebody choosing not to respond to the generic email address, but respond to me directly as a result of receiving it, about drought resilience and so forth. But, you know, about 7 or 8 people took the time to respond to the blast, and not all of the responses were extraordinarily negative. Some were thoughtful,
Good thing.
but what that's telling us is we really are reaching an audience that we haven't been able to reach before,
Very good.
and
Very good.
much more extensive. we haven't checked to see how many got bounced, and eventually this multiple thousand set of email addresses will get tightened down to those that work. But we've never had this capability before. We could reach a few hundred people on our service list for board meetings, and many of those were old email addresses that hadn't been vetted or cleaned up. And this is I won't say a game changer, but this is different. This is
Exciting.
Excellent.
What's
Yeah.
Excellent.
what's the response? Where does the response go to?
So if someone replies, it comes to me.
Okay,
So I got maybe 15 responses. And as Dave just summarized, those were kind of the responses going everything from how great, awesome, keep up the good work, very cool, to questions related to drought and rainwater, the wastewater purification process, and one on public ownership. And then a couple in between that were just kind of questions. But I mean, considering the number of emails that went out, and that was all of the responses that actually came in, I'm actually very impressed with that.
If I may,
Go ahead.
I have a question about so who we're reaching on social media. I've heard, as I'm sure probably you all have, that most of the people on Facebook are old like me.
And
And that, there's other platforms that reach different demographics, younger people in particular. So can you-
Instagram and Twitter.
And we've got both of those going.
And do you agree that those reach different?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
good.
Yeah, so we're covered. We're pretty well
Well,
covered.
I just wanted to point out, the only letter to the editor I've seen in response to this is a letter in the Pine Cone, which is one of our targeted outlets, so to speak. And it would said I saw last week's ad on The Verge in the Pine Cone. Looks like they made the right choice. I mean, the right choice of getting contract completed. What caught my attention, it caught my attention. I actually learned something that I did not know. There's a lot I don't know about water, but it's great to know that we're close to a solution, and the long range shortage may be resolved. I look forward to learning more. What I liked about this letter, it's a learning letter.
yeah,
It's an acknowledge that there's information that I didn't know. This is great source. I appreciate it. And it's just, anyway, I enjoyed reading that letter, but also I know what we're trying to do. And so but it's the only letter I saw in response to the ad. That's all. That's all I say. Amy, yes.
well, just another quick comment. I'm really glad that we're going out and educating people, because that is the number one response I get from people that I know that are educated and informed, but they don't understand water,
Right.
with the water situation. And it always happens. Sometimes they say, well, don't explain it to me. As long as you guys are taking care of it, it's too complicated. So I'm really pleased with that we're getting our stories out in bite-sized pieces.
Great.
Excellent.
Well, speaking of which, let's move on to the second item then, the next 4 weeks in terms of ad copy, and then I can bolster that a little bit with what we're doing with the Coastal Commission.
Can I just slow down, Dave, and just go back to the item one and just say, are there any thoughts that the committee has about how we might expand or add or react to what we've seen so far, not only in the ads, but in the presentation? I'm just looking for any thoughts that you have that ought to be in the mix of thinking, discussion. It's okay, we can just go forward, but I just wanted to pause and ask.
Well, I feel very good about the start. All the things that have been done in this short time seem like exactly what we were hoping to do. So,
Yeah, and yes, Amy.
Just one more comment. Just maybe a half an hour ago, I got one of the big PWN emails, asking for help distributing these by hand. Is that something we're doing, I guess?
Distributing,
This is Public Water Now,
Yeah,
that's something,
private, that's what you're doing. With Public Water Now, yeah.
not from the district, that's, you're
No.
talking about the,
no, that's Public Water Now, but
Right.
I get those emails still. And I just noticed that they're going to be distributing these ads by hand, that they're going to be printing them or something. That just came through.
Well, they do have a flyer that they're distributing, yeah. It's different from what you've seen that
Okay.
I've produced, though, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a different flyers, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, let's go on.
Yeah, and I would say after item 2, let's take public comment on 1 and 2 together because they're somewhat related.
Okay.
And then we'll come back on 3 and 4 together. So over the next 4 weeks, there will be new ad copy. Phil, if you want to touch briefly on what you can without revealing too much,
Okay.
what's in store?
Well, principally what our focus in the next couple of weeks is to essentially was to create an ad that might cultivate some folks to reach out to the Coastal Commission. And we felt that basically the thing that was going to be of most import to them is that which reaches their pocketbook. So we've built an ad around that idea that speaks specifically to that and how the sale of, or how the approval of CalAm will impact their pocketbook. I'll leave it at that.
Work in progress.
Yeah, so without revealing too much. Yeah. But I think it'll grab people by the coat collars.
Well, and I can tell you that we finally, I can't say we've completely cracked the nut, but the last time the capital costs for the desal plant were updated was September of 2017. The construction cost index for 18 through current basically, it's gone from like 1.3%, 3.6%, and so forth. Last year was 13.4%. This year through the first 10 months is 15.04%. The compounded total is 40.74%. So $1 back in September of 2017 should be multiplied by 1.4074. So it's now $1.41. When you apply that to the capital costs, what used to be at that time a total project cost of $298.1 million is now over $400 million. So the capital cost has increased radically. On the CPI, even though we at Pure Water Monterey saw a 22% single year increase in chemicals, energy, and labor, just looking at CPI for that same period, 4.4, 3.0, 1.1, 3.8, 5.7, that's 19.28% increase compounded. So what we're seeing is, basically all of the costs that had been presented to the public are way off. And then the presumption that, 270 plus million would be financed through the state revolving fund. Well, in September, the state revolving fund intended use plan actually dropped the CalAm project out of its list for a lack of progress. So it's unclear if they can just simply renew that or not. But even if they can renew it, the assumed rate was in the 1+% range back when it was last performed. Bear with me just for a second on that. Let's see, where did we go? 1.25%. And now we're looking at 2.3%, so almost double. So everything has gone up, and we're going to fold those all into the most recent. And when I say recent, was September of 2019, when they last updated through an advice letter what the cost of water would be. So we're in effect going to say, look, with these increases, here's the best guess of what the cost of water would be in the current environment. And
Are
it's
you
a
going to, I'm sorry,
big number.
are you going to consider the increase in the cost of electricity?
Yeah, we're going to just have to include that in CPI, as part of the increase. And that's why I think it would understate, because energy's gone up quite a bit, electricity, and chemicals have gone up quite a bit. So, but it's not being reflected in the CPI, unfortunately, because energy is just a piece of that. And energy is such a big component of the O&M costs. So I think it'll undersell or understate a little bit. But anyway, so that's going to be part of the hit to the pocketbook. Unfortunately, we can't make the model do everything that we'd like it to do with, because it's actually changed a little bit, and we've no longer got access to some of the changes. But we can conjecture based on what we know and say, well, here's, the fixed cost of capital are going to go up with the cost of capital and the and so forth. So anyway, but we're going to put something out there, and either it will stand on its own or it'll get a response from Cal-Am to respond to it. But either way, we're going to start getting that out there.
Well, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, question. I mean, unless I'm mistaken, the CPUC has not yet put on its agenda to do the type of analysis you're talking about.
They have not, correct.
So maybe we need to think about asking the CPUC to do that.
Yeah, and there's,
Just a thought.
it's kind of a Dave Laredo question. It doesn't appear that there's a forum in which to do so.
I'm not sure how we do that.
Yeah.
What's the building index, construction index called, LIPEC or something or other?
Well, so what we're using is the State Department of General Services, or DGS, and they take the engineering news record index for San Francisco and LA and use it to create a construction cost index. So we use what's just basically called CCI, construction cost index.
What am I thinking of? The LIPEC or something, whatever, LIPEC, LICEB, LICBCE, something.
What?
Don't know.
Don't know. Okay. I used to, follow that for a while. Yes. Okay. I'm curious about the next 4 weeks or so of the project. Might be focusing on costs or just economic impact on the community, or whatever it might be. I'm not trying to be precise about that. What I did see, though, is that Cal-Am made a presentation to the City Council of Seaside a few days ago, last week.
Yeah, what did you think about that?
Well, to be honest with you, I think we ought to invite those Cal-Am representatives to make,
More presentations?
because it was so bad.
Yeah, it has not gotten a good review. Sorry, Cal-Am rep on our audience, but yeah.
Well, no, that's okay, and I don't mind, and I don't mind being a marked person on this issue, but what I saw were questions from the City Council in Seaside about the cost issue, the impact on low-income population, the relationship of helping Castroville, but not helping the low-income population in our own area. And there are a number of questions. And my only point is that the two representatives from CalAm, which were Josh Stratton, their new public information officer, and a man by the name of Evan Jacobs, I believe,
Yeah, he's out of Sacramento.
who's the new external affairs director. He's old. He's been around a long time. He was active in the Felton campaign
Yeah.
back, 15 years ago. But anyway, there were a number of questions about cost and impacts and so on, and they had no answers. They didn't say this is the latest cost. They didn't say this is how much it's going to cost, even though the return water agreement, maybe I'm going to the weeds here, but the return water agreement has very specific costs to Castroville Community Services District, very specific costs. And they had no answer to the question about what is Castroville going to pay for the water that they get from the return water agreement. They didn't know the answer to that. I mean, hell, I could have answered that question just because I've read the documents, but apparently they haven't even read the documents. My only point is that they're out campaigning and promoting and trying to make a point, and they mixed a lot of issues together. And I think we need to counter all of that, most of it. And anyway, I just make that point partly because I think there are a lot of holes in their promotions. And it's clearly an opportunity for us to clarify some of these issues or clarify the questions that haven't been asked or haven't been answered, maybe.
Exactly.
Point.
Yeah, I agree.
Are there, I just want to, just as a comment in general on visuals, I just hope that we use more and more photographs that actually exist in our own system rather than anything stock. I just feel like that helps tell the question too. It's an employee here who's doing something. I think there's a whole variety of things that we do that are kind of photographic or photogenic. And we can use those. Anyway, that's just long-term thoughts. That's all I'm saying is that please stay away from stock photos. I hope.
Well, I think the next one, while stock will grab your attention for the point that it's making. So, but it's a good point. And, that was part of the pre-Measure J thrust of CalAm to say, we're part of your community. Here we are in your community, with each of those mailers and so forth. So there very likely will be a time and a place to use some of our own photos of things we're doing out in the river or what have you. But right now, I think the last photo was eye-catching and appealing. Given the thrust of the next round on pocketbook issues, I think you'll find the next photo will grab your attention.
Let me just clarify what I'm saying. I don't mind stock photos getting attention. Telling the story, though,
Oh, yeah.
maybe our own
Well,
photos.
again, George, if you look at the newsletter that we just sent out, I included a big picture of the Pure Water Monterey facility in it.
Yeah.
Which I think very few people have seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, and you certainly have something there to show off. So absolutely, that's absolutely. I'm not intending to use stock photos at all with a newsletter. That's specifically sort of to show off the water district itself.
And by the way, just so you know, and I was glad to see that photo because I've gotten a couple of recent inputs from people who are not aware that Pure Water Monterey is already online and has been giving them water for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, that's good. So as a committee, do we have anything more to say on item 2?
Just
Next
go out to
4
the
weeks?
public on 1 and 2, maybe.
Yes, okay, good point. Joel, can we go out to the public?
If
Items
you would
1
like
and
to
2.
make public comment on item number 1 or 2, please raise your hand. All right, and we do have a hand raised.
I'm looking at the newsletter that Stephanie, you just resent to me. Thank you. Yeah, nice picture of the Pure Water Monterey facility.
And at this time, I would like to invite Mark Kelly. Mark, when you're ready, please present your comment. Mark?
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. Can you hear me all right, Kate?
Yeah, hi, Mark.
Hi,
Yes.
good afternoon. A couple of things on the mailer, which I got a copy of. Thank you. The first is, well, I really appreciate the informational nature of what you're trying to accomplish or will be accomplishing. I think we have to be careful on timeframes. At the last Recycled Water Committee of the Monterey One Water, just the end of last week, it showed in the time frame the earliest they'll be able to produce a single drop of water is the end of the first quarter in 2024. And that's the potential, and that's only just a drop, a beginning. And so I think I'd be careful about using the expansion 2 years from now, because it's at least 2.5 years. And as you know, from phase one, it doesn't just ramp up overnight. So perhaps you could think about what's a realistic time frame to give people. I realize the claim here is we don't need the plant for 30 years. So I'm only offering it as a piece of accuracy that I think would help. And the second one is a little definition for me, and that is it'd be enough water to lift the cease and desist on the Carmel River. That confuses me slightly because Cal-Am is now able to pump their water right. And that's all they're going to be able to pump. I mean, there's no way the state can go back and reverse the cease and desist order on their overpumping when they lost their water rights, because they were found to be pumping from the river itself or from the base of the river, groundwater pumping. So I would appreciate if you have time, what you mean by cease and desist on the Carmel River, because the other part of the river, of course, is ASR, when the river's producing enough in the wintertime to pump into the water in the basin. But I don't see how they release a cease and desist on water rights that the company doesn't have. Those are my 2 points, and thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Those remarks register with me. Anyway, any other
Chair
public
Riley,
comment?
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands, so I'll return this back to the committee.
Okay, return to the committee. Let's move forward with other ongoing outreach efforts, which is item number 3 on our agenda.
Yeah, let me interject really quickly on Mark Kelly's comments. He may have misspoken or I may have misheard, but at the Recycled Water Committee, and he's spot on, the report by Dave Lindau to the committee was expanded first water delivery could be by March 2025. Now, granted, when I authorized release of the ad, Phil had already said 2 to 3 years. And I said, hey, look, the last calendar we had was beginning of fourth quarter 2024. And I said, look, it's 2022. That's about 2 years. Call it 2 years. On Thursday, when they had their meeting and they said March of 2025, that is, 2 years plus 5 months. So we rounded, and it's for clarity. But Mark's right. It's going to be, and it still depends on signing of the water purchase agreement and so forth. So the construction schedule itself is actually likely less than 2 years. But anyway, that's he may have said first quarter of 2024, but it is March of 2025 that was presented on Thursday. And the second part is lifting of the CDO. I think there's going to be a recurring theme of a difference of opinion between ourselves and Cal-Am, but our view is the expansion with its 2,250 additional acre feet has such a surplus in the early years that it's not lifting or it's not changing the legal right of the 3,376 of pumping on the river. It's demonstrating that we now have a sufficient supply throughout the system so that neither the river nor the Seaside Basin need to be overpumped to meet demand for multiple years, if not multiple decades. And so That's the intent of that statement. I think we firmly believe that there will be more than enough water to lift the CDO, even though I know the thrust of the company is to say, oh no, expansion's a nice add-on, but there's not enough reliability there in the source waters and other supplies. So we really can't lift the CDO without desal. And that's just going to be a point of contention. But, you know, our prognostication is that, yes, indeed, there is enough supply to lift the CDO, and it can be demonstrated, and it can be, evidence can be provided. So that's where we stand on that. But with that, let's move to the third item. And I think some of you have seen a little bit of this. What we have been doing is, you know, we've attempted to get to city council meetings and other places. We've now presented to the League of Women Voters, the largest Monterey Rotary Club, Del Rio City Council. We're going to have a very limited time in front of the Seaside City Council in 2 weeks. So we're continuing with that effort. You may have noticed that you get suckered into email chains of back and forth, knit and nat kind of discussion, which is interesting how, you know, it starts with a smaller distribution list and then suddenly every board member of our district gets put on it. We've been making an attempt to set the record straight or have a quick comeback to say that something's just not quite right. And people can't curb their enthusiasm for responding to a response and so forth. We won't be responding to a lot of responding. So, but we have been trying to get on top of those issues. And so there's been an email out on protective water levels to interested parties that Paul Bruno engaged as
Yes.
water master chair.
Mhm.
There's been an email chain to address significant errors in the Rudy Fisher alternate view of supply and demand that we can't fix. But, you know, basically we have to at least tell the other recipients that it's just off. And then there's an Eric Tynan email chain about social justice. And, you know, he obviously didn't find that our answer very satisfying. So we're continuing to try to do those as well. They do suck up time, but I think they're important because, you know, we get it into the hands of one or two people who then repeat it. That's helpful. That's significant. We at least have to counteract messaging with our own response. We're now, and you know, we continue to have discussions with folks, and I think I may have told you this or the board this. You know, we get asked a lot of questions from Public Water Now. We get asked a lot of questions from Landwatch. We get asked a lot of questions from various attorneys and other entities. And so we're trying to be as responsive as we can to get that information out. And then obviously, a couple of you here are very aware that we've asked for ex parte meetings with coastal commissioners. I'm a little surprised at the lack of response for most of them. We've had 2 responses. So obviously we're gonna have to follow up again midweek. But we have 1 meeting out of the 2 and just a request to send information from the second one. So there's quite a bit going on that front. We have shared our supply and demand, the adopted supply and demand forecast, the testimony, the link to the League of Women Voters with the Coastal Commission. So we'll continue to try to make that link available for anybody who wants to sit and listen to an explanation of how the demand forecast was done. So that's kind of the other things that are going on that you don't just pick up a paper and see. So that concludes I think it concludes our discussion on item 3. Stephanie? I
No,
don't-
not exactly, Dave. Sorry. I just want to say that even my advocacy for being a more assertive about our messaging to the larger community, I've got to say that I was not just, it wasn't in the front of my brain to know that there will be reactions to that, and then there will be questions coming to you. And I've got to say, to my own, fault, that I didn't get focused on that kind of dynamic, that there is more work being required of you and staff, not only to get the word out, but then respond to the questions that come from getting the word out. And I didn't consider that. And I just hope you keep us informed, you and Stephanie, just where that is in your workload, and just keep us up to speed on it, because what we don't want is to overburden everybody while we're trying to do something good. Anyway, that's all.
No, it's all good. It's all good. And it requires attention right now, but it's not going to carry us for, the entire year. So we're just, it's current, but we can deal with it.
Well, and then my only other comment, this is supposed to be the slow time of year, Thanksgiving, Christmas. So I don't know, Amy or Karen, do you have any other comments before we go kind of to the end of the comment under the meeting, toward the meeting?
Not right now.
Yeah,
Okay,
right
okay.
now, me either.
Oh, I can tell you something completely on a different track of outreach. So we do have 2 upcoming classes that we do in partnership with Cal-Am and the Water Awareness Committee. On October 27th, there's a Protecting the Trees online class. And then on November 10th, there is a composting workshop on creating the soil sponge. And those will conclude our fall workshops. And we do have I think we had 100 people signed up for the 27th right now. So,
Wow,
Oh, great.
excellent.
Well,
Okay, heading into the home stretch, Dave.
Yeah, well, I think, I kind of mixed these two together. We do have a presentation coming at Seaside. It will be very time limited, but Alvin was very good about getting that scheduled. And that's about all that we've had. I've got a meeting with City of Monterey and AMBAG to try to sort through our arena numbers in, our arena numbers out. How does it all work? Even though we've already kind of drawn connected the dots to show that the arena numbers are in the regional growth forecast.
Mhm.
There's still a lot of confusion over that. And you probably saw, for those of you who did take time that you'll never get back to read the Rudy Fisher alternate supply and demand forecast, that confusion about housing, as if housing is different than people. Again, we've already kind of talked that to death, but
Yeah,
it's still, it pervades the psyche. And that's why I thought, Phil's recent one about all the water that's needed for housing and growth is important, because those are the 2 things everyone's been saying is not available. The MCHA and Pebble Beach, we need commercial growth. We need it. Well, it's in there. And then similarly, the big scary RENA housing numbers. Oh, we need to add those on top. It's like, no, you don't, and here's why. So meeting with AMBAG to help allay really city manager at Monterey's concerns, because when I met with him alone 2 weeks ago, apparently that didn't stick strong enough. And so that goes a little bit to what George was saying before, which is, we can say all we want, we can submit the testimony that we want, but if some of these other opinion leaders or thought leaders don't understand it or aren't brought into, getting, greater detail on how to understand how it really works, then they're going to continue. I mean, these are some smart people with a misunderstanding of how this all works. And so we've really got to continue to push so they do understand. And so we're doing a few of those kinds of things as well. And, we'll just see where it leads.
Are you just taking a different approach a couple of times so that if people don't understand approach A, maybe approach B is gonna hit them?
That's what I'm hopeful for in this particular case, because I sat with Hans at city offices at Monterey, and I said, hey, here's how these three products that AMBAG produces all work together. And he seemed to understand it, but I think where we're at now, and it'll be good to have AMBAG with us, will be to show specifically, hey, look, this section of this document says this. And then have the AMBAG people go, yeah, yep. And this executive summary of that document has this table, which is sourced from this other document over here. Yep. And that document over there is referenced by the 6-cycle RENA document over here. And, it's kind of like, now you can see it and then also hear the authors say, well, that's right. I don't know. We'll see if it's helpful, Director Anderson, but yeah, we do try a little bit differently. And we also, I think we've gotten out of the habit now of over explaining, because sometimes you answer something and we're trying to answer with greater authority that we just know we're right because we've done the research, rather than let me explain to you the research that supports why we know we're right, because people's eyes glaze over. So we'll see where it's going, but we're, on the Coastal Commission issue, the hard part is, and we talked about this a little bit, Dave Laredo, you were there talking about process issues. The September 2nd, I believe it was, letter from the Coastal Commission that allowed this hearing to move forward, in effect agreed that normally the Coastal Commission, want all these other permits all buttoned up. And they specifically say in their letter that the executive director is waiving that aspect of the Coastal Commission policy. And so, everything we can do to say you're having this hearing too soon doesn't matter. They've already kind of said, we agree that there's a lot of stuff up in the air, but we're still trying to say, hey, there's all these things up in the air, and more of it creeps out of the woodwork every day.
They need to be reminded that they need to condition it so that they get appropriate permits.
Yeah.
They need to condition it so they have access to the outfall.
And they should condition it on, and this is where it gets a little weird, but maybe on returning to the PUC on not just supply and demand issues, but the operating requirements if both projects are online together, the expansion and desal.
And because the project that was approved by the PUC is not the project they're now touting.
And the project
Bingo.
that they're now touting was specifically not approved by the PUC.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Very, very well pointed out by the Land Watch letter. Very
Yes.
clear.
Yep.
And the costs have all changed a great deal.
And if you're going to do 279 million with state revolving fund monies, but a month ago the state revolving fund said you're off our list due to a lack of progress. Well, do you have that money or don't you have that money, and what's the impact? And the unfortunate part is, how do you consider social justice as a criterion at the Coastal Commission if you don't know what the rate impacts are?
Exactly.
Well, how about the social justice aspect of having today's ratepayers have to pay for a project that they don't need for 20 to 30 years?
Exactly.
Another one.
Yes.
And charging our low income customers going rate
Yeah.
in order to finance another community of low income customers.
Yeah, and
How's that fair?
when you get back to your computer and you see the two most recent emails from Eric Tynan, and here's the unfortunate part. You know, when Rudy sends an email, he includes Joaquin Esquivel. It's not like the State Water Board is weighing in on this particular issue. Eric has been including Tom Luster on all of this.
Mhm.
And so we've included people in our petty back and forth arguments, but clearly the disadvantaged community numbers and assertion that Eric's oversimplifying it as a wealthy, homogeneous community on the Monterey Peninsula, which is, as I said, way out of line. It struck a chord because he's already sent 2 response emails to that. But again, he includes everybody on the distribution.
I had one question that I heard in the Cal-Am presentation to the Seaside City Council last week. They said they're using, what do they say, renewable energy for their project. That was kind of news to me, but what are they basing that on? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, I think their mitigation, they promised to purchase offsets to basically offset everything that PG&E is unable to demonstrate that they have offset. But it's not like they have now bought a contract with Solar One to, you know, directly benefit from that. Or if they have it, it would be news to everybody.
So that's another issue on the come, perhaps, you know.
Yeah, maybe.
To be resolved. Oh, yeah, I was just, that was news to me when I heard it, and I just reacted to that. With that.
Yeah.
Well, committee, I asking for comments before we head to the finish line.
I just have a couple of things I'd like to follow up with offline. One with you, Dave Laredo, and with you, Dave Stoltz. But we don't have to keep the whole committee for it. So thank you. This was we're off to a very good start, I think, with the outreach effort.
Yeah, and I think, you know, my kind of last thing I want to leave you with is where it seems to be heading from Cal-Am is at some point in the next week or two, they're going to offer that every customer gets a unicorn, a rainbow, or a kitten. And we're trying hard not to go down that path.
Good.
But there are claims made right now that can't be backed up. And it goes to what Dave Laredo said earlier, which is they're specifically promoting a configuration at 4.8 MGD that they don't have permission to build.
Mhm.
And other things, you know, and so it's like, you know, what can you do in that?
Well, you'd think that they know well enough. I mean, the Coastal Commission obviously knows that's not the plan that they're looking at.
Yeah. Yep.
So that seems, I don't know.
Well, rest assured that the portion of the PUC's decision that relates to the 4.8 MGD scenario found its way out of my office across the airwaves the day after, maybe the day of, when Cal-Am released its press release about the 4.8, because it was just too incongruous. And so, you know, the pine cone didn't go into it deeply enough, but, you know, it's in the in basket of, or was in the in basket of several regulators. So we'll see.
Good.
And just a comment from me that these last minute changes by Cal-Am has not been communicated to the wider community. even the presentations they made just 2 weeks ago did not include these new changes. So everything's happening so fast. I don't see how the Coastal Commission could consider that there's been adequate public discussion, exposure, understanding, presentations, just so that the community understands what's going on.
Yeah.
It's been very late, very tardy.
It sounds like the Friday night drop of the 300-page stuff that they were doing when we had LAFCO, doesn't it?
Ah,
There does. Oh,
Emily.
yeah.
Did you want to say more than yeah? Maybe
Well,
you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't.
no, I shouldn't. But if we want to close this meeting and if you want to stay on, I just want to share something really amusing.
Okay.
All right, well, let's, any final comment from the committee members? None. Okay.
Just- thank
comments
you.
from the public.
Oh, okay, let's ask for any
Yeah.
public comment at the end and then
Do you
we'll,
have public comment on item number
Yeah, Mark's
3 or
got it.
4?
Yeah, Mark set his hand up.
So let me go ahead and screen share. And at this time, I would like to invite Mark Kelly. Mark, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Hi. Well, first of all, David, you're correct. It was March of 2025, and I did mistake myself. Secondly, I would just think in the mailer, you might be better off if you're asking for relief from the cease and desist. Under 9510 condition 2, that's a new water supply source that would allow for removal of the cease and desist. Why don't you just quit saying Carmel River? It would allow for removal of the cease and desist, and that eliminates confusion that somehow the river is going to be pumped more than the 376, which is never going to happen.
Right.
At least
right.
that's my personal opinion.
Yep.
And they're never going to go back to allowing that. So maybe just eliminating the words Carmel River. And again, I apologize on the dates, but I think we should all watch it pretty carefully because we know this is a big construction tool, and there's lots of permits that the Monterey One Water doesn't yet have, and that could slow things down, particularly as it relates. There are several permits that could slow them down. So I think we just want to be careful of saying using 2 years or anything close to it right now. Thank you.
Understood. Thanks, Mark.
okay, thanks, Mark. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah,
Dave-
Phil,
Dave-
Phil, go ahead and drop